Good morning. Welcome to Library with Mrs. Floor. Today we have the nonfiction story about Frank Epperson, who created a very famous frozen treat that I'm sure you have probably enjoyed at some time in your life. This story is called The Boy Who Invented the Popsicle, the cool science behind Frank Epperson's famous frozen treat. Written by Renaud and illustrated by Milan Pavlovich. I want to be a great inventor. Frank William Epperson knew what he wanted to be when he grew up. And everyone in Frank's family knew too, because in case they forgot, he reminded them often. When not busy with his schoolwork or chores, Frank could be found adventuring with his brother Cray, practicing his cornet, or learning magic tricks. He also pondered important questions. Do goldfish sleep? Do ants have ears? Do woodpeckers get headaches from pecking all day? But Frank's favorite pastime was inventing, and to invent, Frank knew he had to experiment. So off he would go to his laboratory, his back porch. There he doodled and designed, tinkered and tested, analyzed and scrutinized. By the time Frank was 10 years old, he had already masterminded his first invention, a hand car with two handles. At twice the speed of a regular one-handled hand car, Frank whizzed down the streets of his neighborhood. Hot dog! Frank also experimented with liquids. Why won't they play together? How to do your own experiment with liquids. Stuff you need: a half a cup of cooking oil, half a cup of water, a drinking glass. What to do: pour the cooking oil into a glass. Add the water. Mix the two liquids together. Wait 2 minutes. What happened? The oil rose above the water because it is less dense, lighter for its size, than water. No matter how much you mix these two liquids, they will always separate. Why? Just like magnets are attracted to other magnets, water molecules are attracted to other water molecules. But oil molecules and water molecules are not attracted to each other. One more thing. Food coloring is made of water. See what happens when you add a few drops of food coloring to the glass. The drops will slowly travel through the oil and only mix with the water. Molecules are like building blocks. Just as a house is made of bricks, you and I and almost everything on Earth are made up of particles called molecules. Molecules are so small, they can only be seen with a very powerful microscope. But what Frank loved most was experimenting with flavored soda water, the kind that hissed and wheezed when he had a glassful to his ear and sent tangy bubbles galloping across his tongue with every gulp. Frank had his heart set on inventing the yummiest, most thirst-quenching, lip-smacking soda water drink ever. So, off Frank would go to the corner store to buy the flavored soda water powders he needed for his experiments, often with his little brother Cray tagging along. Hi, Big Ep. Hi, Little Ep. Cray was a handy taster for Frank's concoctions. Some of his attempts were unsuccessful. You could even say they were disastrous. But Frank kept on trying. A whole lot of fizzing going on. How to make your own lemon-flavored soda water. Stuff you need: 4 tablespoons of lemon juice, 1 cup water, a drinking glass, half teaspoon baking soda, 1 teaspoon sugar. What to do: pour the lemon juice into the glass, add the water, add the baking soda and mix well. You should see some fizzing action going on. Now, taste your lemonade. You can add the sugar to sweeten. What happened? The baking soda reacted with the lemon juice and created a gas called carbon dioxide. This is what makes the fizz. One more thing. Try this experiment with other citrus fruits like limes, oranges, and grapefruits. One day, Frank and the other children in his neighborhood decided to build a miniature amusement park. There was a theater, a merry-go-round, and a scenic railway. Frank was assigned the soda water stand, which suited him just fine. He could share his soda water creations with all his friends. It was also around this time that something peculiar happened. The temperature dipped, then plunged. This would not have been unusual had Frank lived in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, or Pocatello, Idaho, where it could be bitterly cold in winter. But he lived in San Francisco, California, where only rarely did the temperature drop below freezing. So Frank tried another experiment. He left a glass of flavored soda water outside overnight. I wonder what this drink will taste like frozen. When he woke the next morning, Frank ran to his back porch to discover his soda water had frozen solid. He could no longer sip it. He had to lick it like a lollipop. Frank had invented a frozen drink on a stick. Hot dog! As he grew older, Frank's invention did not melt from his memory. He just tucked it away in a corner of his mind, and there it stayed while he and his sweetheart, Mary Frances, began raising their gaggle of children. But when Frank noticed more and more people eating chocolate-covered ice cream bars, off he went to his laboratory, now his garage, to experiment. Could I make money with my frozen drink invention? What if I used fruit juices? Frank found a way to make many of his drinks on the stick at the same time, with test tubes to mold them, wooden sticks to hold them, and a cool way to freeze them. Hot dog! For Frank's drinks on a stick to freeze, they had to be cold, very cold, colder than 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the freezing point of water. Why? Because their ingredients, like sugar and flavoring, lowered their freezing point. So what did Frank do? He built a freezing box that held dozens of test tubes suspended in a mixture of crushed ice and salt. Frank knew that salt lowered the freezing point of water and that salty water froze at a much lower temperature than plain tap water. The salt and ice mixture would be colder than 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The Big Freeze. How to show that salt lowers the freezing point of water. Stuff you need: 2 drinking glasses, 4 tablespoons of salt, 2 cups of lukewarm water. What to do? Pour 1 cup of lukewarm water into each glass. Add the salt to one of the glasses and mix well until the salt is fully dissolved. Put both glasses of water into the freezer and wait 3 hours. What happened? The plain tap water froze, but the salty water did not. Why? Water becomes ice when it reaches 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. But what if there is sodium chloride, also known as salt, in the water? It lowers the water's freezing point. The temperature of the salty water needs to be colder than 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit for it to freeze. And one more thing. Touch the glass of salty water. It feels colder than the glass of frozen water. Cool. Frank's drink on a stick also had to freeze quickly. If they froze too slowly, the sugar and flavoring, which were heavier than water, settled at the bottom of the test tubes, leaving just flavorless frozen water at the top. Frank wanted his treats to have the same tasty flavor throughout. The salt and crushed ice mixture surrounding the test tubes was so cold it froze the liquid inside the tubes in minutes. Frozen already? A frozen treat in a flash. How to make your own frozen treat in only 5 minutes. Stuff you need: 1/2 cup of your favorite fruit juice, 10 large ice cubes, 1 cup of salt, 1 cup of water, a small plastic resealable bag, and a large plastic resealable bag, oven mitts. What to do? Pour the juice into the small plastic bag. Try to remove the air from the bag and make sure it is well sealed. Pour the ice cubes, water, and salt into the large plastic bag. Put the smaller bag of juice inside the larger bag. Make sure the larger bag is well sealed. Put on your oven mitts and shake the bag back and forth for about 5 minutes to mix the ice, water, and salt around the smaller bag. What happened? As you saw in the previous experiment, salt lowers the freezing point of water. This means salty water gets much colder than 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. When you shake the large bag back and forth and work the ice, water, and salt mixture around the smaller bag of juice, this mixture gets colder and colder and the juice freezes. This is why oven mitts come in handy. And one more thing, it's best to shake the bag over the sink to avoid a mess. Frank renamed his invention the Popsicle and began selling it for a nickel at county fairs and beaches. In the evenings, his children helped him roll the nickels he had earned. Frank had a clever way to encourage shop owners to sell his frozen treats. For several weeks in a row, he sent one of his children into a store to buy an Popsicle. Each week, the shop owner had to tell a different child that Popsicles were not sold in the store. Frank would then visit the store himself and ask the shop owner to stock his treats. Of course, the owner agreed after having had so many requests. Frank's children were always keen to sample their father's confections. "Pop, can we have a sickle? Orange is my favorite." And with all of them clamoring for their Pop's tasty fabrications, in time the name of Frank's invention changed to the Popsicle. Let's look at these interesting pictures in the back. In this one, you see Frank on the right and his younger brother Cray on the left practicing their cornets in about 1907. In the next photo, Frank and his wife Mary Frances are pictured with 8 of their 9 children in 1937. In the front row, we have Frank holding Marge, Teresa is standing, Joe and Mary. In the back row, we see John, Frank Jr., Sister Serena, who was Donna before becoming a nun, Dawn, and George. This Popsicle poster is a vintage advertisement, and it's reproduced with the kind permission of Unilever. Down here we have Frank making his popsicles at his stand in Salinas, California on July 20th, 1923. In this large black and white photo, we see Frank selling his popsicles in Salinas, California on July 20th, 1923. It is said to be the very first photograph of popsicles being sold. The bottom 2 pictures are the courtesy of Chris Lang, and these top 2 photos are courtesy of Jack Epperson. The author's note. Francis, or Frank William Epperson, was born August 11, 1894 in Willows, California. He was an inventor at heart and loved to experiment. By the age of 10, Frank had made himself a hand car operated with 2 handles. The following year, he left his glass of soda water on the back porch and woke up to a frozen treat that eventually became known around the world as the Popsicle. And in case you're wondering why Frank did not put his glass in the freezer, well, that is because modern home refrigerators with freezer compartments did not become popular in North America until the 1940s. Frank left school at 14 to work in his father's Chinaware factory. 4 years later, he eloped with his sweetheart, 16-year-old Mary Frances Williams. Together, they opened a business painting china dishes, which Frank sold door to door. Then, during the First World War, he worked as a machinist foreman in the shipyards. By the time Frank was 25, he and Mary Frances had 5 children, including 2 sets of twins. Although Frank had secured employment as a real estate developer by then, he had always welcomed the opportunity to make extra money for his growing family, which would eventually number 9 children. In the early 1920s, Frank noticed that a chocolate-covered ice cream bar had started gaining popularity, and that is when he remembered his childhood invention. Using 6-inch glass test tubes as mold and sticks of wood from the Diamond Match Company, Frank began making his frozen treat, which he named the Popsicle, in large quantities. He first tested out the Popsicle in 1922 at a fireman's ball at the Neptune Beach Ballroom in Alameda, California. He and his wife walked around eating one frozen treat after another in the hopes of drawing attention of those in attendance. It worked. By 1923, the treat was renamed Popsicle because Frank's children repeatedly asked for their Popsicles. To ensure repeat customers, Frank printed 1 free Popsicle on every 10th popsicle stick. In 1924, Frank finally applied for patents for his frozen confectionery and his confectionery making apparatus. Eventually, he sold his rights to the Popsicle for $50,000 to pay off some debts and help his family through financial hardship. Although he later regretted this, given the wealth the rights could have brought him and his family over time, he was always quick to remind his children that what was important was not what they had, but who they were. In his lifetime, Frank invented a number of other things, including a dictionary to simplify spelling called Spell, a powdered drink named Hydry, a sunscreen called Vitano, a signaling device for ships to warn them of approaching danger, as well as a rotary engine for airplanes. He also designed and built 2 of his homes, both of which were inspired by castles. Frank Epperson died on October 22, 1983. He was 89 years old. Today, with more than 30 flavors available, hundreds of millions of Popsicle ice pops are slurped every year throughout the world. Frank Epperson's frozen treat, invented in 1905 when he was only 11, is now well over a century old.